A sharp, guttural scream echoes through the silence of the apartment. Claire stands in the doorway, clutching her 5-year-old son, Jamie, tightly to her chest. Her ex-husband, Mark, is storming out of the apartment, his face twisted in fury. The slam of the door reverberates like thunder, and the distant sound of sirens fills the background, a foreboding sign of things to come. Claire's heart races in her chest, and her mind spins with confusion. What just happened? She had never expected to be here, on the edge of yet another battle with Mark. She never imagined that it would come to this. Betrayal, rage, and deep-set fears surface as Claire faces the harsh reality of what's at stake. Her child's safety and future. The pain of the past, buried so deep, now threatens to resurface in the most painful of ways. The question looms, how far will Claire go to protect Jamie, the only person who matters? Claire had always known that being a single mother would be a struggle, but she never imagined it would feel this painful. Every sacrifice she made, every late night spent working overtime, every tear shed in silence, every moment of exhaustion had led her here, to this very moment. All for Jamie. She had always promised herself that she would protect him at all costs, no matter what. But now, her resolve was being tested in ways she hadn't prepared for. The man she had once loved, the father of her child, was now a stranger whose actions were nothing short of betrayal. Why would he do this? Claire whispered to herself, her voice breaking. Why would he take Jamie from me? It wasn't just the loss of the man she had once trusted that hurt. It was the realization that the very foundation of her life was crumbling. But she couldn't afford to break now. She had Jamie to protect. No matter what it took, she would do whatever it took to keep him safe. Her love for him was the only thing that mattered, and she would fight for him with everything she had. The days that followed Mark's departure were filled with tension and uncertainty. Every phone call, every visit to the lawyer's office, every confrontation with Mark felt like a battle she couldn't afford to lose. Her worst fear, losing Jamie, was now a reality she was being forced to face. It wasn't just the custody battle that had her on edge. Mark had begun spreading lies about her, trying to paint her as unfit to be a mother. Claire's world began to crumble as her financial situation worsened, and her reputation was attacked by the very person she had once loved. It seemed like everything she had built was under attack. Her job was at risk, her dignity was being shredded, and her hope was slowly evaporating. I can't lose him, Claire thought to herself, her voice shaking. I won't lose him. The weight of the fight pressed down on her, but she couldn't stop now. Jamie was everything. He was the reason she would keep going, even when the world seemed determined to tear her apart. The betrayal went deeper than Claire had anticipated. Her best friend, Emma, someone she had trusted with her heart, had been feeding information to Mark. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. How could you do this to me? Claire confronted Emma one night, her voice shaking with anger and disbelief. Emma's eyes flickered with guilt, but also with fear. I didn't want to, Claire, but he promised me things would be better if I helped him, Emma admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Claire could hardly believe it. Her closest friend, someone she had leaned on for support, had betrayed her in the worst possible way. I thought you were my ally, Claire said, her words bitter and filled with pain. I never thought you'd turn on me too. Emma lowered her head in shame, but Claire couldn't bring herself to forgive her. She had to keep moving forward, for Jamie's sake. She couldn't afford any more distractions. Not even from those she loved. In the days that followed, Claire began to gather strength in the most unexpected places. She found solace in quiet moments with Jamie, in the little victories that came with getting through each day. But most importantly, she found herself taking the first steps in her legal battle. She met with a lawyer, Sarah, who specialized in custody cases. Sarah's kind but firm presence gave Claire the courage she needed. You have a case, Sarah told her. Mark's tactics are underhanded, but we have a chance to fight this. You're stronger than you realize, Claire. The words gave Claire a sense of hope she hadn't felt in weeks. It wasn't just about fighting for custody anymore. It was about taking back control of her life, her future, and most importantly Jamie's. "We're going to win this," Claire said, her voice steady. "I'm not giving up." The days turned into weeks, and the custody battle continued to drain Claire emotionally and financially. Every court appearance felt like a test of her strength, and the weight of her responsibilities began to take its toll. She spent late nights preparing her case, organizing documents, and trying to balance everything at home. But every day, she felt more exhausted. She barely slept, and the stress seeped into every aspect of her life. Jamie could sense the tension, and even though he was too young to fully understand, he became clingier, needing his mother more than ever. The guilt weighed heavily on Claire's heart. "I'm doing this for you, Jamie," she whispered one night, holding him close as he fell asleep in her arms. "But I'm afraid of what this is doing to us." The road ahead was uncertain, but Claire knew she couldn't stop. She had to keep fighting for Jamie's future, no matter how hard it became. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and full of tension. Claire sat at the defendant's table, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Mark, her ex-husband, sat on the other side, his face a mask of calm. The lawyer for the opposition, a slick, well-dressed man, presented his case with ease, painting Claire as unstable, unfit, and overly emotional. Every word felt like a knife in Claire's chest. She had prepared for this moment, but nothing could have prepared her for the emotional toll. "You have to stay calm, Sarah," her lawyer whispered, her hand on Claire's shoulder. "Don't let him win." When it was Claire's turn to speak, she took a deep breath and stood up, her voice trembling but firm. "I am Jamie's mother," she said, her eyes scanning the room. "And I will fight for him, no matter what it takes. He is my world, and I will do whatever it takes to keep him safe." The words didn't come out as confidently as she had hoped, but the raw emotion behind them was undeniable. She would not let Mark tear their lives apart. Just when Claire thought things couldn't get worse, an unexpected twist surfaced. During a meeting with Sarah, her lawyer, they uncovered something that Mark had been hiding, evidence that could change the course of the case. It was a set of documents, hidden in the last-minute paperwork, that showed Mark had been living in an unstable situation, and his financial resources were not what they appeared to be. "This is big," Sarah said, her voice filled with a mix of shock and satisfaction. "This could give us the edge we need." But Claire felt conflicted. "I don't want to win by exposing him, by tearing him down," she admitted, her voice low. "I just want to protect Jamie." But Sarah was right. This was a piece of the puzzle they needed to win. Mark had manipulated the system, and Claire couldn't let him get away with it. It wasn't about vengeance, it was about securing Jamie's future. The truth had to come out, no matter how painful it was. After discovering the truth, Claire confronted Mark. She needed to hear it from him, to hear him admit his lies and manipulations. It was late one evening when she found him outside his apartment, pacing, clearly agitated. "Why are you doing this, Mark?" Claire asked, her voice steady but full of anger. "Why can't you just let us go? Why can't you let Jamie have the life he deserves?" Mark turned to face her, his face hard with bitterness. "I'm doing what's best for him," he snapped. "You've always been too soft, Claire. You'll never be able to give him the life he deserves." Claire's heart broke at his words. He wasn't interested in what was best for Jamie, he was interested in control. She fought back the tears, standing her ground. "This isn't about you, Mark. This is about Jamie, and you're not going to take him from me." Her words hung in the air, heavy and final. She wasn't going to let him manipulate her anymore. As the days passed, the exhaustion weighed heavily on Claire, but she began to see a glimmer of hope. Her friends, Sarah, and even Jamie, began to remind her of the strength she had within herself. One night, after another long day of court hearings, Claire sat down with Jamie in their apartment. He climbed into her lap, his small hand resting on her cheek as he looked up at her. "Mama? Are we going to be okay?" he asked, his voice small and full of innocence. Claire smiled softly, brushing a tear away. "Yes, Jamie," she whispered, her voice steady. "We're going to be okay. No matter what happens, we'll always have each other." It was a moment of peace amidst the chaos, and for the first time in a long while, Claire allowed herself to believe it. They would be okay. She would make sure of it. The court hearings were coming to an end, but the weight of the situation felt heavier than ever. Claire had won small victories along the way, but each step forward was met with a deeper sense of dread. The reality of losing Jamie was still too close, too real. Late one night, after another tense conversation with her lawyer, Sarah, Claire sat alone in her apartment, her mind racing. "I can't lose him," she whispered aloud, her voice shaky. "I've already lost so much." Her thoughts flashed to the years of sacrifice, the countless hours she'd spent trying to make ends meet, and the love she poured into every day with Jamie. She had worked so hard to protect him, but now the walls were closing in. What if I can't do it? What if I'm not enough? A deep sense of fear settled in her chest. The weight of the upcoming judgment felt unbearable, and she wondered if there was even a point in continuing to fight. But then, she glanced at Jamie, asleep on the couch, his innocent face a reminder of everything she had left to fight for. "I won't let him go," she promised, a new determination rising within her. "I won't." Claire's fight seemed to take a darker turn when an unexpected betrayal surfaced. Her best friend, Emma, the one person who had been by her side through the darkest times, now stood on the opposite side of the courtroom. "I didn't want to, Claire," Emma had said in a low voice, standing across from her in the hallway just before the hearing. "But Mark said he'd take me back. He said he'd fix everything." Claire's heart shattered in that moment. "You've been feeding him information?" she asked, her voice breaking. "How could you do this to me?" Emma looked down, ashamed, but there was a sense of desperation in her eyes. "I was scared, Claire. I thought I was helping you. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you." Claire's eyes burned with tears, but she refused to let them fall. This was a betrayal of the worst kind, and the pain of it went deeper than anything Mark had done. "You've betrayed me, Emma. You're not my friend anymore." The words were cold, but they were true. Emma's betrayal cut deep, and Claire knew that it would take everything she had to rise above it. But for Jamie, she had to. The courtroom felt like a battleground. Mark's lawyer had become more aggressive, using every legal tactic to undermine Claire's character. They painted her as unstable, unfit for custody, and their accusations were relentless. Claire held her ground, but with every strike against her, it became harder to ignore the overwhelming pressure. "You're not enough," Mark's lawyer had said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You can't give Jamie the stability he needs. You're on your own." The words felt like daggers, and Claire's throat tightened as the reality of the situation sunk in. With each passing day, the emotional toll took its toll on her. The sleepless nights, the endless court hearings, the emotional manipulation, it was breaking her down. She felt lost, adrift in a sea of uncertainty. But when the gavel slammed down, the weight of the decision was even heavier. "We'll know soon," Sarah said, her voice weary but confident. "But we're not giving up." Claire nodded, trying to hold on to the glimmer of hope. But deep down, the fear of losing Jamie gnawed at her. As the final moments of the trial loomed, Claire found herself losing the battle, both in court and in her mind. She had fought with everything she had, but it never seemed to be enough. Her bank account was drained from legal fees, her job was on the line, and her heart felt like it was breaking in two. One night, after a particularly brutal hearing, Claire found herself standing in the bathroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. "What if I fail him?" she whispered, the question echoing in the silence. Her reflection seemed distant, as if it wasn't even her. The woman in the mirror was a stranger, a woman weighed down by too many failures. But just as she was about to break, the door creaked open behind her. Jamie's soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "Mama, are you okay?" His innocent face, framed by the doorway, reminded her of why she was fighting. She wasn't fighting for herself, she was fighting for him. "I'm okay, Jamie," Claire whispered, wiping away the tears she didn't want him to see. "We'll be okay." And in that moment, something inside her shifted. She wasn't going to let anything break her. Not now. Not ever. The phone rang, breaking the silence of Claire's apartment. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw the number. It was Sarah, her lawyer. "Claire," Sarah said, her voice calm but urgent. "There's been a development. We've got new evidence. It could change everything." The hope Claire had been clinging to suddenly felt real again. Sarah explained that new witnesses had come forward, offering crucial testimony that would discredit much of Mark's case. Claire's hands shook as she listened. "This is our chance," Sarah said. Claire's chest tightened with a mixture of fear and anticipation. "I'm not giving up, Sarah," Claire said, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "We're going to win this. I'll do whatever it takes." She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was ready to fight with everything she had. Just when Claire thought the battle couldn't get more intense, an unexpected figure from her past reappeared, her estranged sister, Lily. Claire hadn't spoken to Lily in years, not since their falling out over their parents' estate. But now, standing in her kitchen, Lily was offering more than just apologies. "I've been watching everything unfold, Claire," Lily said quietly, her voice filled with regret. "I know we haven't spoken in a long time, but I can't sit back and watch you fight alone." Claire's heart raced. She wasn't sure whether to be angry or relieved. "You've been watching? You've been here all along?" Claire's voice cracked, a mixture of betrayal and hope bubbling up. Lily nodded, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I should been here for you, Claire, but now I want to help. I have connections. I can provide the evidence you need." Claire paused, trying to process this sudden offer. "But why now?" she asked, the skepticism clear in her voice. "Because I know what this feels like," Lily replied. "And I can't let you lose everything." The pain of their past was still fresh, but Claire had no choice. For Jamie, she had to put her reservations aside. "All right," Claire said, her voice steady. "We'll do this together." With Lily's help, Claire's strategy began to shift. She had a new ally, and Lily's connections provided a crucial advantage. They began to dig into Mark's financial records, looking for inconsistencies and lies. "We can use this to prove he's been hiding assets," Lily explained as they went over the documents. "It'll show he's not being truthful about his ability to provide for Jamie." Claire looked over the papers, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "This could change everything," she murmured, her mind working overtime as she considered the implications. "But it's risky. If Mark finds out, he'll retaliate." Lily's gaze hardened. "Let him. You've been through worse. This is our chance." Claire nodded, her confidence growing. The tide was turning in her favor, but she knew there was no going back now. She had to be prepared for whatever came next. With Lily by her side, she felt ready to take on the final battle. Just when Claire thought she had a handle on the case, another betrayal emerged. This time, it came from within her own family. Her mother, who had always been distant and uninvolved, suddenly made it clear where her loyalties lay. "I'm not going to support you in this fight, Claire," her mother said coldly during a phone call. "Mark has always been a good father to Jamie. You're just being emotional." Claire's heart sank. "You don't understand. You never have." Her mother's words cut deep. "You've made your choices, Claire. I can't be part of this." Claire hung up the phone, the hurt too much to bear. This wasn't just about Mark anymore. It was about the painful realization that even her own family couldn't be counted on. She had to do this alone, even if it meant carrying the burden of betrayal on her shoulders. But she had to keep fighting. For Jamie, I won't let him down," Claire whispered, her voice filled with resolve. Despite the betrayals, Claire couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope when the final court hearing arrived. The evidence Lily had gathered had given her case new strength, and she had faith in her lawyer, Sarah, who had been relentless in her pursuit of justice. As they walked into the courtroom, Claire's heart pounded in her chest, but this time, she felt more prepared. "We have a chance," Sarah whispered as they sat down. "Let's make it count." The room was tense, filled with the weight of the final decision. Mark was already seated, his lawyer by his side, but Claire didn't look at them. She kept her focus on the task at hand. The gavel slammed, and the room fell silent. Claire's mind raced with the weight of what was at stake. The outcome was still uncertain, but for the first time in this long battle, she allowed herself to believe that they could win. Her thoughts shifted to Jamie, And she knew that this moment wasn't just about winning, it was about securing a future for him. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to herself. The verdict came down like a thunderclap. Claire held her breath as the judge read the decision. Mark's manipulations and deceit had been exposed, and the judge ruled in Claire's favor. "You have won custody of your son," the judge said, his voice firm. Claire's heart pounded in her chest, her hands shaking as she looked at Jamie, who was sitting quietly by her side. She had won. It wasn't just a victory in court, it was a victory for everything she had fought for. It was for the love of her son, for the promise she had made to protect him. "We did it, Jamie," Claire whispered, her voice breaking as tears filled her eyes. She could hardly believe it. After all the pain, all the battles, she had done it. She had fought for Jamie's future, and she had won. After the court battle, Claire found herself standing at a new threshold, one filled with both relief and uncertainty. Winning custody was a monumental victory, but now the work of rebuilding their lives began. The wounds from the battle were still fresh, and the emotional scars ran deep. As she unpacked the boxes in their new apartment, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. "We're finally free," she whispered to Jamie as he ran around the living room, excited about their fresh start. But freedom came with its own challenges. She wasn't just rebuilding their home, she was rebuilding herself. Each step forward felt like a victory, but the shadows of the past still loomed over her. Claire knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Jamie by her side, she was determined to make it work. "We have a chance now, Jamie," Claire said, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "We're going to be okay." It was a promise, not just to him, but to herself. As Claire settled into her new routine, she realized that even though the court battle was over, the emotional toll lingered. There were moments when the fear of losing Jamie crept back in, moments when the insecurity from the past threatened to resurface. One evening, as she sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Lily. "You're doing great, Claire. I know it's not easy, but you've got this." The words were simple, but they filled Claire with warmth. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear that. "It's not easy, but I'm doing it," Claire said softly to herself. The journey wasn't over, but she was moving forward, one step at a time. And with every day, she became more certain that she could handle whatever came next. "We're stronger now," Claire whispered to herself, looking out the window as the sun dipped below the horizon. With the burden of the custody battle behind her, Claire began to realize that her new life wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving. But as she tried to balance work, parenting, and rebuilding herself, the weight of responsibility began to feel overwhelming. Jamie was growing fast, and Claire struggled to keep up with his needs while managing everything else. "Mama, will you play with me?" Jamie asked one afternoon, his eyes wide with excitement. Claire looked at him, her heart swelling but also aching. "I'm sorry, baby. I have to finish this first," she said, gesturing to the pile of work on her desk. Jamie's face fell slightly, but he nodded, retreating to his room. Claire stared at the papers in front of her, guilt gnawing at her. She knew she had to find a way to balance everything, but it wasn't always so easy. "I'm trying, Jamie," Claire whispered under her breath. "I promise I'll do better." It was a constant struggle, but she knew that as long as she had Jamie, she had a reason to keep going. As Claire continued to rebuild, she found herself starting to open up again. For the first time in years, she began to let people in. She had pushed everyone away after the betrayal of Mark and Emma, but now with Lily's help and support, Claire felt ready to trust again. One evening, after a long day of work, Lily came over to visit. They sat together in the living room, talking about everything and nothing. "You've come a long way, Claire," Lily said, her voice soft with admiration. Claire smiled, but it was bittersweet. "I've learned to keep going," she said quietly. "I've learned that it's okay to ask for help. I don't have to do this alone." As they continued to talk, Claire realized that the walls she had built around herself were starting to come down. The process of healing was slow, but it was real. "I'm glad you're here," Claire said to Lily, her voice sincere. "I don't know what I would have done without you." For the first time in a long while, Claire felt like she could trust again. and that felt like a victory in itself. One evening after putting Jamie to bed, Claire stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. It had been a long, difficult journey, but she was beginning to see the possibility of a new future. A future where she wasn't defined by the pain of her past, but by the strength she had found in herself. "We've made it, Jamie," she whispered, her voice filled with quiet determination. "We've made it through the storm." Jamie's soft breathing could be heard in the background as Claire stood in silence. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. There would still be challenges, but for the first time in a long while, Claire felt a sense of peace. She had fought for her son, and now she was going to build a future where they could both thrive. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to herself, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Better than okay. The promise of a new life, free from the chains of betrayal and fear, was within reach. Claire could feel it in her bones, and this time she knew she was ready. The peace Claire had started to build was short-lived. Despite her efforts to create a stable life for Jamie, new challenges arose with an intensity she hadn't anticipated. One morning, as she prepared for work, she received a letter from her employer. Her position was being downsized. "Not again," Claire whispered, feeling the weight of the news hit her like a physical blow. She had fought so hard for everything they had, and now, just when things were starting to settle, the foundation beneath her feet began to tremble. "I'll figure this out," she said to herself, her voice firm despite the panic rising within her. But as the reality set in, her mind raced. Without a steady income, how would she provide for Jamie? How would she protect their future? Claire's resolve was strong, but her fears began to surface. She had already fought so much. Was this a sign that she would always be fighting to survive? "I won't let him down," Claire vowed, gripping the letter tightly. "I'll find a way." In her moment of crisis, Claire reached out to Sarah, her lawyer, and one of her few trusted allies. "I don't know what to do, Sarah," she admitted, her voice tight with frustration. "I've been working so hard to keep everything together. And now this." Sarah's voice was calm but firm. "You've done it before, Claire. You've fought for Jamie and won. You can handle this too." Claire's hands shook as she gripped the phone, but Sarah's words grounded her. "You're right," Claire whispered. "I can't keep running from these challenges. I need to face them head on." Sarah offered practical advice and connected her with a career counselor, someone who could help Claire navigate her next steps. "You're not alone in this," Sarah reminded her. For the first time that day, Claire felt a sense of relief. She wasn't in this alone, and though the road ahead was uncertain, she had people she could rely on. "Thank you," Claire said softly, her heart filled with gratitude. "I'm going to fight, just like I always have." With Sarah's encouragement, Claire took the first steps toward rebuilding her career. She updated her resume, researched new opportunities, and began to network in a way she never had before. The world of job hunting was foreign to her, and every application sent out felt like a shot in the dark. But with Jamie's future hanging in the balance, she knew she couldn't give up. "This is a new chapter," Claire told herself as she sat in front of her laptop, looking at job listings. "I can do this." The uncertainty loomed large, but for the first time in months, Claire felt a sense of empowerment. She was no longer waiting for life to give her something. She was actively creating her future. And while the fear of failure still lingered, Claire found herself moving forward, step by step. "No more looking back," she whispered, her hands typing with renewed purpose. "This is my time." Despite her outward determination, Claire couldn't shake the feelings of self-doubt. Every day, as she worked through her job search, she wondered if she was good enough, if she was strong enough to handle everything life was throwing her way. One evening, as Claire stood in front of the bathroom mirror, she looked at her reflection and asked herself, "What if I fail?" The fear of failure had always been there, but now it felt more real than ever. Her hands trembled as she wiped away the exhaustion from her face, her reflection staring back at her with a mix of vulnerability and strength. "I can't fail, Jamie," Claire whispered, the words filled with an overwhelming sense of responsibility. "I won't fail him." But as the fear gnawed at her, Claire took a deep breath and whispered, "I've come this far. I won't stop now." She turned away from the mirror, feeling both fragile and powerful at once. The journey was far from over, but Claire was beginning to believe in her own strength again. One afternoon, Claire received a phone call that would change everything. It was a job offer, a new opportunity with a company that aligned with her values and skills. The position was challenging, but it promised financial stability and the potential for growth. As Claire listened to the details, a rush of emotions flooded her. This was her chance, a real chance to rebuild her life. She was both excited and terrified. But when she hung up the phone, a smile spread across her face. "We did it, Jamie," she whispered. "This is our fresh start." The weight of the past still lingered, but Claire knew that she had stepped into something new, something better. It wasn't just a job, it was a new life. And with that new beginning came a new sense of hope. "I'm ready," Claire thought, her heart swelling with pride. "We're going to be okay." Claire realized she couldn't move forward without confronting her past. One evening, as she gazed at a picture of Jamie, she whispered, "I've done it. We've done it." But to heal fully, Claire knew she had to forgive herself. "I did the best I could," she thought, letting go of the guilt that had weighed her down for so long. For the first time in months, Claire felt a sense of peace. Claire unexpectedly reconnects with Tom, someone she had met a few months ago. Their simple conversation sparked something new. "I've been afraid of trusting again," Claire admits. Tom reassures her, "You don't have to do this alone." For the first time, Claire feels open to the possibility of love again, slowly but surely. Jamie, now growing, looked up at Claire one evening saying, "Mama, you're my hero." Claire smiled through the tears, realizing that no matter what happened, their bond was unbreakable. "You're my hero too," she whispered. It was Jamie's love that had kept her going, and in that moment, she knew they had made it through the hardest part together. Claire received a call from a local charity, offering her a chance to speak about her journey. "I'm ready," she thought, realizing that sharing her story could help others. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about thriving. "This is my time," she whispered, ready to inspire others with her strength. On stage at the charity event, Claire shared her story with a room full of women. "We are stronger than we realize," she said, her voice firm. The crowd erupted in applause, and Claire realized she had not only transformed her life, but was now empowering others to do the same. "We'll all make it," she said, smiling as Jamie watched from the front row.